You really made an impression on me, Miss Collins, the deep, steady voice carried across the sleek glass office, cutting through the quiet hum of air conditioning. Ava froze. The cup of half-spilled coffee trembled in her hand, a dark stain spreading across her white blouse like a slow disaster. She didn't dare turn around. She didn't need to. That voice, calm, amused, unmistakably male, belonged to none other than Nathan Hayes, the CEO of Haven Designs. Oh, God, of course it did. Just 5 minutes earlier, she had been standing in line at the company cafe, trying to balance her new employee badge, a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing, and a coffee that was way too full. It was her first day, her dream job, and she had already promised herself that nothing would go wrong. Then, naturally, everything went wrong. The elevator had stopped 1 floor too early. A nervous intern had bumped her elbow. The coffee had splashed forward, soaking her blouse in a warm, brown blotch. By the time she stumbled into what she thought was an empty break room, she was one deep breath away from crying. But it wasn't a break room. It was the executive conference suite, sunlight streaming across the glass table, a skyline view of Manhattan glittering beyond. And now she was standing there, half-buttoned blouse, hair falling loose from her bun, when the door swung open. Nathan Hayes leaned against the doorframe, sleeves rolled to his forearms, expression caught between surprise and laughter. He looked every bit the legend the staff whispered about. Mid-30s, tall, dark hair brushed neatly back, the kind of presence that made people straighten their posture without realizing it. Ava spun around, clutching her cardigan to her chest like a shield. I didn't know this was your office, she stammered. I swear I was just changing. Clearly. His tone was light, teasing, but his eyes, grey, intelligent, held her gaze longer than they should have. Next time, Miss Collins, you might want to check the name on the door before disrobing. Her cheeks burned hotter than the spilled coffee. Right, of course. I'll just go somewhere else. Far away. Nathan stepped aside, letting her pass, but his voice followed her as she hurried toward the door. You really made an impression on me, Miss Collins. The words hung in the air long after she fled down the hallway, heart pounding. Ava Collins had grown up in a small suburb just outside Seattle where the rain never stopped and the trees seemed to whisper secrets. Her father was a carpenter, her mother a florist, and between wood and wildflowers, Ava had learned one simple truth: buildings should breathe. While her classmates dreamed of skyscrapers and luxury villas, Ava spent her evenings sketching houses with open courtyards, green rooftops and sunlight streaming through living walls. Nature doesn't have to disappear when we build, she once told her college professor. It just needs to be invited in. That belief had carried her all the way to New York City, to the glass tower of Haven Designs, one of the country's leading architecture firms. To her, it was a world of brilliance and pressure, where names like Hayes were spoken with reverence. Nathan Hayes, the CEO, was the kind of legend whispered about in architectural circles, a prodigy who had designed his first award-winning project at 26, a visionary who made the cover of Forbes before 30. But behind the headlines was a man marked by silence. 5 years ago, a car crash on a stormy winter night had taken both his parents, the founders of Haven Designs. Since then, Nathan had turned inward, his life revolving around work and nothing else. Colleagues described him as brilliant but distant, exacting but fair, and, to everyone's surprise, the awkward coffee incident with the new architect seemed to amuse him more than annoy him. 2 days after that humiliating encounter, Ava received an email from Human Resources. Mr. Hayes requests a follow-up meeting regarding project assignments. She reread the line at least 10 times before convincing herself it wasn't a prank. When she entered his office, this time fully dressed, fully composed, Nathan was already there, studying blueprints spread across the table. Miss Collins, he said, without looking up. "You're from Seattle?" "Yes, sir. I've seen your portfolio. You have a particular obsession with greenery." Ava hesitated, unsure if that was praise or criticism. "I just believe a building should feel alive, not trapped in steel and glass." Nathan finally looked at her. Really looked. His expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Interesting. Most architects want to make structures dominate their surroundings. You want yours to coexist." He studied the file a moment longer, then spoke decisively. "You'll be joining the Green Haven project." Ava blinked. "The Green Haven project? But that's our most ambitious venture yet," he finished for her. "A sustainable urban district. Solar grids, open-air courtyards, water reclamation systems." "I need people who think differently." She stood frozen, trying to process it. "And who will I be reporting to?" Nathan's lips curved just slightly. "You'll be working directly with me, Miss Collins." Her breath caught. "Directly?" "With you? Unless you prefer another department." "No," she said too quickly, then flushed. "I mean, no, of course not." "I'd be honored." Nathan nodded, returning his gaze to the blueprints. "Good. We start Monday." Ava left the office with her heart racing. The embarrassment of their first meeting still lingered, but now it was eclipsed by something new, a flicker of excitement, a strange pull toward the man behind the glass walls. Somehow, she had gone from the girl who spilled coffee on her first day to the woman working side by side with the most enigmatic architect in New York, and she had no idea that Green Haven would soon change both of their lives forever. The following months unfolded in quiet rhythm, 5 of them, to be exact, and a blur of late nights, glowing monitors, and sketches layered with endless revisions. Ava and Nathan worked side by side in the glass-walled design studio of Haven Designs, where the city lights below mirrored the blueprints glowing across the table. Green Haven was no ordinary project. It was Nathan's legacy and Ava's chance to prove herself. Together, they chased perfection. At first, their collaboration was purely professional. He was precise, methodical, every line on paper measured, every deadline sacred. She was intuitive, daring, willing to challenge the logic of architecture with the poetry of space. Their differences clashed at first, but over time, they began to move in harmony, like 2 instruments learning to play the same melody. Sometimes they spoke for hours, arguing over the placement of solar grids or the color of facade materials. Other times, silence settled between them, a comfortable quiet, broken only by the scratch of pencils and the distant hum of traffic 20 floors below. By the end of summer, their desks had become twin islands of chaos, coffee cups, rolled drawings and tiny model trees scattered everywhere. They stayed long after the others left, their reflections merging in the glass walls as night claimed the skyline. Nathan found himself watching her more than he should. The way she bit her lip when she concentrated, or how her laughter softened the sterile brightness of his office. There was something disarming about her. Not the way she looked, but the way she believed. For years, his world had been made of numbers and blueprints, logic and loss. He hadn't realized how grey everything had become until Ava walked in and brought color back into it. And Ava, she saw through him. Beneath the tailored suits and calm authority was a man burdened by solitude. She sensed it in his long silences, in the way he stared at the city after everyone else had gone. There was a loneliness there that spoke to her, one she didn't dare to name. It was late October when their routine cracked open into something more. The office was empty, rain tapping lightly against the windows. Ava sat cross-legged on the floor, rearranging sketches, while Nathan leaned against the table, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. The warm glow from a desk lamp carved soft shadows across his face. Without looking up, she asked quietly, "Do you ever sleep, Mr. Hayes?" He paused, glancing at her, a slow smile touching his lips. "Sometimes. But then I'd stop seeing you in my dreams." The words hung in the air like static, dangerous and unplanned.
Ava froze, caught between disbelief and something deeper she couldn't define.
Nathan looked back at his plans as though nothing had happened, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of regret. Or was it truth? After that night, everything changed. Whispers began circulating through the office about late meetings, long hours, and the mysterious way the CEO always seemed to linger when Ava was around. Neither of them addressed it. They kept working, kept pretending nothing had shifted, but as autumn deepened and the city lights grew colder, both of them knew the truth they couldn't say aloud. Something had begun, something neither of them could stop. December arrived with frost on the windows and tension in the air. The Green Haven project, 5 months of relentless work, was finally ready for presentation. The entire company gathered in the glass-walled boardroom, the city glittering behind them like a promise. Ava sat at the far end of the table, clutching her notebook, her sketches stacked neatly beside her. Nathan stood near the screen, calm and composed, his voice steady as he introduced their vision. A city that breathes. It was everything they had dreamed of. Then came Victoria Hale, senior architect, 15 years with Haven Designs, sharp as glass and twice as cold. She'd never liked Ava, not from the start. As the presentation ended, Victoria rose to her feet. "Impressive," she said, her tone laced with venom. "Almost too impressive, considering these drawings look remarkably familiar." The room fell silent. Ava frowned.
"Excuse me?"
Victoria tapped her tablet, bringing up another set of blueprints. A submission to the European Urban Design Expo, dated 6 months before yours. The layout, the elevation, even the atrium structure.
"Identical." She turned toward Nathan.
"Tell me, Mr. Hayes, are we in the business of originality or imitation now?"
Ava's pulse spiked. "That's impossible. I've never seen those designs."
But whispers were already spreading across the room. Words like plagiarism, reputation, lawsuit hung in the air. Nathan's jaw tightened. "Victoria, that's a serious accusation." "Oh, I know," she replied coolly. "But serious accusations require serious evidence. I suggest an internal review." The meeting ended in chaos. Ava tried to speak with Nathan as the team filed out, but he only said quietly, "We'll look into it." Hours later, she was called into his office. The lights of the city reflected off the glass walls, casting cold shadows between them. Nathan sat behind his desk, shoulders heavy, eyes unreadable. "Legal wants us to suspend your access to project files until we finish the investigation," he said softly. "It's temporary." Ava stared at him, disbelief flooding her chest.
"You think I stole those designs?" "I don't," he said quickly.
"But the board?" "The board?" Her voice cracked. "Nathan, I've worked beside you every night for months. You know me?" He stood, walking toward her, but she stepped back. The distance between them felt like a canyon.
"You said you believed me," she whispered, voice trembling.
"Then why does it feel like you don't?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again.
No words came.
Just silence. Heavy, suffocating, final. Outside, snow began to fall. The city glittered with lights and carols, but inside that office, something beautiful had just shattered. Ava packed her things that evening. By midnight, her desk was empty, her ID card left neatly on the table. She walked out into the freezing night, breath clouding in the air, the sound of Christmas bells echoing faintly in the distance, and Nathan, standing by the window above, watched her disappear into the snow, his reflection overlapping with hers until she was gone. He told himself it was for the company, for the right reasons, but deep down he knew it was cowardice. And in the silence he'd chosen, he'd lost far more than a project. He'd lost her. 2 years later, spring sunlight spilled over the streets of Portland, catching the gentle sway of ivy on red brick walls. Inside a modest studio tucked between a cafe and a bookstore, Ava Collins ran her fingers over a sketchboard filled with soft green lines and handwritten notes. Her studio, Collins' atelier, was barely 100 square feet when it began. Now it buzzed with quiet energy. Clients from local communities, students eager to learn about sustainable design, and a few ambitious projects that carried her name into the city's creative circles. The scandal at Haven Designs had nearly broken her, but in the ruins of that heartbreak, she'd built something new, her own voice. She no longer designed to impress, she designed to heal. Her guiding philosophy, sustainable living begins with empathy, caught attention across the Pacific Northwest. By the second year, architectural journals were quoting her, and her eco-friendly homes were featured in design showcases. Then came the email that changed everything. You are invited to present your project, Community Heart, at the International Green Architecture Summit, May 15, Year 3, Portland Convention Center. Ava reread the invitation until her hands trembled. Community Heart was her most personal design yet, a concept for an open, sustainable public center that fostered connection through light, air, and shared gardens. The kind of place she once dreamed of building at Haven Designs. She smiled faintly. "Guess we're finally ready," she whispered to herself. Meanwhile, in New York, Nathan Hayes sat in his corner office, staring out at a skyline that no longer inspired him. Haven Designs was thriving. New investors, new awards, but he felt nothing. Every success rang hollow. A year after Ava left, an internal audit uncovered the truth. Victoria Hale had forged competition entries and stolen drafts to frame Ava. When confronted, Victoria fled overseas, vanishing without a trace. Nathan had cleared Ava's name publicly, but privately he knew that apology came far too late. He tried to find her. Portland, Seattle, even California. Every lead ended in silence. Her old number was disconnected, her email inactive. It was as if she'd erased herself from his world completely. Sometimes, late at night, he'd still open the Green Haven blueprints, tracing the faint pencil notes Ava had left in the margins. Let the light breathe. Architecture should feel like forgiveness. He wondered if she'd ever forgive him. Then came May 15th, Year 3. Nathan attended the International Green Architecture Summit as a keynote sponsor, more out of duty than interest. The grand hall shimmered with glass ceilings and white banners, the air alive with quiet conversation and the scent of spring rain. He wasn't paying attention. Not until a familiar name flashed on the screen. Community Heart, presented by Ava Collins. Collins' Atelier, Portland. His heart stopped, and then she appeared on stage, confident, radiant, her hair tied neatly back, a calm smile on her lips as she began. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Ava Collins, and today I'd like to talk about building spaces that heal." Nathan couldn't move. 2 years of guilt, regret, and longing converged in that single moment. She was right there, alive, thriving, and more extraordinary than ever, and, for the first time in years, he remembered what hope felt like. The air inside the Chicago Convention Center shimmered with a kind of quiet anticipation. That stillness before a revelation. The annual International Architecture Forum was in full swing, filled with renowned designers from across the world. Nathan Hayes had come for one reason only. A single name listed in the program brochure. Ava Collins. Founder, Collins Atelier, Portland. 2 years of searching, of regret and unanswered messages had led him here. He arrived early, took a seat near the back of the hall, and waited. When the lights dimmed, she walked onto the stage, poised, graceful, confident. Her hair was shorter now, her eyes brighter, her voice steady, as she spoke about Community Heart, a project built on empathy and sustainability. The crowd listened in reverent silence, but Nathan barely heard the words. All he could think was, she's here, she's real. But then something else caught his eye. Near the corner of the stage, a small child sat quietly on the floor, stacking wooden blocks. His cheeks were round, his hair a soft chestnut brown, and his eyes, those unmistakable blue eyes, mirrored Nathan's exactly. 18 months old, maybe less. But one look was enough. Nathan's breath left his lungs. His hands trembled. When the applause thundered through the hall, he didn't clap. He stood frozen as Ava stepped down from the stage, surrounded by admirers, shaking hands, smiling politely. And then, for the briefest second, their eyes met across the room. Her smile faltered. Minutes later, after the crowd began to scatter, Nathan walked forward. The child, the little boy, looked up at him, curious, clutching a tiny wooden cube in his hand. Nathan's voice cracked.
Ava, is he?
She held his gaze for a long moment before whispering, "His name's Liam. And yes."
He's yours. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved.
Then Nathan dropped to one knee, lowering himself until he was eye level with the boy. "Hi there, Liam," he said softly, his voice trembling with wonder. "I'm your dad." The little boy blinked, then reached out and placed the wooden block in Nathan's palm, as if it were an offering. Nathan laughed quietly, tears forming in his eyes. Ava watched them, her expression a mixture of love and fear.
"I didn't tell you," she said finally, her voice low.
"When I found out I was pregnant, everything was falling apart. You were fighting for your company's name, and I
couldn't face you. I didn't think you'd want to be tied to me after everything." Nathan stood, taking her trembling hands in his. "Ava, I made mistakes, unforgivable ones.
I let fear decide for me, but not this time." He tightened his grip, his voice firm but gentle.
"Let me fix them, for you and for him." Her eyes glistened, the wall she'd built for 2 years finally cracking.
"Nathan," she whispered, almost as if afraid to hope. He smiled faintly. "We don't have to rush."
"Just let me be here."
"With both of you." Ava looked down at Liam, who giggled as a beam of light from the skylight landed on his toy blocks. And in that soft golden glow, something long lost began to heal. They didn't need promises or perfect endings, only the courage to begin again. The months that followed were quiet, gentle, the kind of peace that comes only after a storm. Nathan didn't make grand gestures at first. He started small, weekend trips from New York to Portland, helping Ava draft contracts, contacting partners, reviewing permits for Community Heart. Sometimes he arrived with coffee and breakfast pastries. Sometimes he simply sat in the corner of her studio, watching her work with Liam playing at her feet. He was learning, slowly, how to show up. Ava remained cautious, her heart still guarded. But Nathan's persistence was steady and sincere. He never pushed, never demanded. He only offered time, effort, and presence. By spring, the Community Heart Center began construction. A luminous structure of glass, timber, and living greenery designed to be both sanctuary and gathering place. Ava led the project with quiet determination, and Nathan, true to his promise, used his company's resources to support her vision. Not to own it, but to honor it. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the half-built frame of the center, Ava found Nathan standing by the open scaffolding, his shirt sleeves rolled up, helping volunteers hang the final beam of the atrium. "Didn't think CEOs were allowed to climb scaffolds," she teased. He smiled, wiping dust from his hands. "Rules are flexible for people trying to make things right." Ava paused beside him, looking at the building glowing in the sunset. The air smelled faintly of cedar and rain, just like home. "This," she said softly, "is what I dreamed of, Nathan. A place that breathes."
"A place that heals." He turned to her, eyes warm.
"And you made it real." 3 months later, the day of the Community Heart grand opening arrived. Guests filled the hall, Children ran through the open gardens, and sunlight poured in through the skylight Ava had designed to mimic a heartbeat, light shifting gently across the walls. When she stepped onto the stage to give her speech, her voice trembled, not from nerves, but from gratitude. "This center stands for forgiveness," she said, "for second chances, and for the courage to believe in love again." The audience erupted in applause. But as the sound faded, Nathan stepped forward. He held a small velvet box in his hand. Ava froze, her breath catching. "You once told me architecture should feel like forgiveness," Nathan said softly, eyes fixed on her. "You were right. This building, this life, it's the most beautiful thing we've built together." He knelt down, the light from the skylight glinting off the silver band in his hand.
Ava Collins, will you let me build the rest of my life with you?
For a moment, there was only silence. Then tears filled her eyes, and she whispered through her smile,
Yes, 1,000 times yes. Liam clapped his tiny hands from the front row, shouting, "Mummy said yes!"
The whole crowd laughed, the hall filled with warmth and joy. That evening, as the celebration faded and the city turned gold outside, the three of them stood together before the glass wall of Community Heart. Nathan's arm wrapped around Ava's shoulders. Liam pressed against his leg, pointing at the horizon. The sun melted into amber light, reflecting across the glass. And for the first time in years, Nathan felt whole. In the glow of the building they'd created, their silhouettes merged. Not architect and apprentice, not CEO and employee, but a family rebuilt from love, forgiven by time,